Hey everybody, Pastor Steve here. Thank you as always for joining me for today's devotion in our Bible reading plan at First Baptist Church. We are in John chapter 9. I hope you've already read the chapter, written in your journal, what God said to you. This is a beautiful story in chapter 9 of a man who was born blind, had been blind all his life, and Jesus heals him by giving him sight. And the Pharisees, the religious leaders of Judaism, are really upset about that. They don't believe he was blind from birth, so they bring his parents into the assembly, interrogate his parents, and they confirm, yes, this is our son, and yes, he was born blind and has always been blind. They don't want to give credit to Jesus for this miracle. They're upset because verse 14 tells us that it was a Sabbath on the day when Jesus made the clay and opened his eyes. So Jesus healed this man on the Sabbath, and they viewed that as horrible because it meant Jesus was working on the Sabbath. I mean, he healed a blind man. And they're upset about it because it's on the Sabbath. In verse 16, therefore some of the Pharisees were saying, this man, referring to Jesus, is not from God because he does not keep the Sabbath. Others were saying, how can a man who is a sinner perform such signs? And there was a division among them. I mean, they were so blinded by their rules, by how they thought things had to be done, they could not see the great miracle, the great work of God Jesus had done in healing this man. They did not want to acknowledge that it was of God, simply because he broke their rules. He broke their traditions. He didn't do it their way. And in verse 24, after they send his parents out, they bring the man in a second time, who had been blind, and said to him, give glory to God. We know that this man is a sinner, referring to Jesus. And I love the man's answer in verse 25. I don't know if he's a sinner or not, but here's what I do know. I was blind, but now I see. Okay, he did that. That's what I know, but they're upset. Verse 28, they reviled him, this blind man that had been healed. They reviled him. You are his disciple, but we're disciples of Moses. I mean, they're still so blinded by their tradition and their rules. Verse 34, they kicked him out. And so it's a beautiful story of Jesus healing this blind man. And his giving testimony to Jesus so beautifully and clearly and powerfully. And it's a tragic story about their hardness of heart. And in my journal, what I wrote about was, this story scares me. Scares me. Because as a religious person, as a follower of Jesus, I don't want to be like these Pharisees. And yet it's so easy for us who are religious to become like the Pharisees without even realizing it. I saw a video recently of a preacher who was harshly condemning contemporary Christian worship music because to him it was too intimate, too emotional, too much like a love song, and we don't need to be singing to God like that. We need to be singing these big majestic songs that worship him as King and Creator. And so he was criticizing these love songs to Jesus, these heartfelt, emotional songs expressing personal, intimate thoughts toward God, and he was criticizing that. That's not how you worship God. You sing these majestic songs. And I thought to myself, as I was listening to this preacher, has he ever read the book of Psalms? I mean, has he ever read the Psalms? Psalm 42:1, as the deer pants or longs, you know, when an animal is sweating and they're wet and they're thirsty, or you're out working in the yard and it's hot and you want water. As the deer pants, longs for the water brooks, he says, so my soul thirst for God. Oh God, I am so thirsty. That's intimate. That's heartfelt. It's not majestic. That's personal and it's devotional. Psalm 84 verse 2, my soul longed, and he says even yearned for the courts of the Lord. Oh God, I yearn to be in your presence, in your house. That's heartfelt, that's emotional, that's intimate. I love singing the majestic hymns of the faith that honor Jesus as King of Kings and Lord of Lords. The majestic hymns of the faith that honor God as the creator of the universe. But I love also singing the personal, heartfelt, new songs of devotion to God and love for Jesus. I love them both. And I pray to God that my heart and my attitude never becomes like the Pharisees, blind to what God is doing. It's not doing it the way they think God should. Blind to the grace and power and miracles of God, the work of God, because he's not following all their rules and all their expectations. I don't want to miss what God is doing right in front of me. Do you? So easy for us, if we're not careful, to act like the Pharisees and miss the mighty hand of God. May that never be true of us. God bless you. I'll see you tomorrow as we look at chapter 10.